Hey there, and welcome to episode 170 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. This is your host, Greg Lindberg. Here on this episode, we are chatting with a gentleman from Canada, from north of the border here in the US. And this gentleman has been into curling for the blind and visually impaired for a couple of decades now throughout his life. And this is actually the first time we're talking about curling for the blind here on the podcast, so I really hope you enjoy learning about a new sport. So let's go ahead now and hit the ice and get rolling with episode 170 of the Eyes Free Sports podcast. Okay, so joining me here on this episode of the podcast is Murray Rudolph. And Murray is a very accomplished blind curler. Murray, welcome to Eyes Free Sports.
Good afternoon, Greg. How are you doing?
Doing well. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And this is the first time in almost 7 years of this podcast that we're going to be talking about curling for the blind. So really excited to dive into something brand new here.
Yes, from what I understand, it's not that common. A lot of people don't know about the blind curling in the States. So
yeah,
I'm more than happy to be in contact with you.
Awesome. And hey, maybe this will help kind of raise awareness here in the US, about the sport and try to bring it here too. You never know. So
Most certainly.
Yeah. So I like to always kind of start from the beginning. If you just want to kind of rewind the tape here, so to speak, Murray, and just tell us where you were born and where you grew up in your formative years.
Well, I was born in a small town of about 1,500 people in a community north of Saskatoon here, about 40 miles. And I've always, all my life, lived around this city, different small towns, but always in the vicinity here. And it's, back in about, when I was 19, back in about 1979, I moved to the city and been loving it. A lot more things accessible in the city than a small town, so.
Right. Oh, yeah. Amen to that. Been there, done that in the small towns.
Oh, yes.
It can be a challenge for sure.
Well, that it is, because a small town, the last small town I lived in was really small. My dad was a railway worker, and it was only about 500-600 people. So all you had for entertainment was a skating rink and a curling rink. So you didn't have too much to do.
Right. So naturally, you're going to probably gravitate to one of the two or both, right?
Exactly.
So as far as your visual impairment, what is your eye condition?
Well, that's they don't know really. I was born with poor eyesight, wore thick glasses until I was the age of 13, and then became legally registered. My eyesight deteriorated, and at one point I developed a fluid in back of my eyes, which caused my retinas to detach. But the fluid damaged the retinas to the point where they couldn't be attached anymore. So I eventually became totally blind at 19. But they said, I went through gene testing and the whole bit, and they said I should be able to see. They could never figure why I had poor eyesight to begin with. So it's a mystery.
Wow. Yeah, I have spoken to at least a few others kind of in a similar boat that either were misdiagnosed or never really got a formal answer on their condition or diagnosis. So in terms of education, so it sounds like you did have, some visual impairment going through schooling. Is that right?
Yes, back then schooling was very difficult. They just did not have the technical aids that were needed for a blind person to further the education. So sadly, I only went through grade 9 in school before I more or less got frustrated because the aids just were not there, and I was failing, so I just dropped out. And probably about 5 years later, I managed to get myself my GED done and got a grade 12 GED. So in schooling wise, that's as far as I ever got. Was at least it's a grade 12 equivalency.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, just thinking back to like the 70s kind of time frame, it sounds like obviously technology was far, far different than we have today, right?
Well, when I was growing up in a small town, and they're just, I was the first actually blind student in that school, and they really didn't know what to do for me. The aides weren't there, and
Hmm.
they didn't know how to go about doing things. So they more or less just put everything on a well, at that time it was a reel to reel tape, and I did my school that way, work that way, and virtually listened to the tape and got the questions and whatnot for work, and I put it back onto a cassette tape.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, definitely the dark ages, pun intended, right?
Oh, no kidding. No kidding. It was tough, and it was frustrating because I wanted my education, but the aides just were not there.
Right, right. So in terms of college then, did you go on to pursue any kind of college after you got your GED?
No, I didn't. Unfortunately, I don't know how it is in the States, but up here, people are scared to hire a blind person. They
Hmm.
figure you're blind, you're not capable of doing anything. So finding employment was very difficult. I eventually wound up making my own business.
Hmm.
It was a flat deck courier service. I got trucks and flat deck trailers and did a courier service, but
Oh, wow.
that lasted about 7 years before the economy kind of got tough and fuel prices raised and the whole bit, and it just wasn't feasible anymore.
Right, right. Interesting.
But I loved it. I managed it. I did everything all myself except for driving the vehicles, obviously. But I ran the whole business, the accounting, right to finding the loads and everything. I
Wow.
just took it upon myself. I was a go-getter. One thing I've always stood by. Just because I've lost my sight, doesn't mean I can't do anything. I can do anything just as well as anybody else. It's just I can't see. That's the only difference.
Exactly. Yep. I'm totally with you. And yeah, in terms of employment here in the US, I'm sure it's a very similar situation. You know, they say 70% unemployment rate in the blind community. I don't know if that number still holds, but
Well,
it's,
they say that, but I'd love to see where those figures are because they come up with same figures like that here too. And I've known
hmm.
so many blind people that aren't working. It's just I don't know where they get their figures from.
Yeah, I know. And just, like you said, convincing people to understand that we can do things. And especially in this day and age with so much assistive technology out there, there's so much more we're able to do compared to even 10, 15, 20 years ago.
In some cases, we can actually do the job better because we rely on feeling and hearing, where some others take advantage, and we can actually get by on doing a job better sometimes.
Exactly. And I mean, I consider myself and other folks I know who are lucky enough to be working, that we're probably more loyal and because it's so much harder for us to find employment. So if we actually get a job, we're going to take it more seriously and try to do as best we can.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. So then transitioning to sports. So I'm curious, as a kiddo, did you have any opportunities to play sports growing up?
Well, when I was growing up, I still did have partial vision, so I did all the sports in school, whether it was the badminton or basketball, volleyball, actual baseball, track and field. I took part in everything that I could because, well, I'm on the mindset. There's no reason why I can't do it. The only way I'm going to know if I can do it or can't do it is if I try. So
Sure.
I took part in everything, and well, in the small town, there was just a curling rink and a skating rink for entertainment, especially in winter. And well, I was always, even as a preteen, even I was always found in the curling rink. It was always intrigued me. I loved the sport. I always wanted to know how it was done, and I learned how to do it, and I still do it, and I love it to this day.
Wow. That's awesome. So for those who aren't as familiar, if you just want to explain, let's start with like traditional curling. How does traditional kind of mainstream curling actually work?
Well, those that don't know what curling actually is, it's done on a flat sheet of ice, artificial ice, and it's about 15 to 20 feet from left to right by about 150 feet long. And you've got two sets of rings at each end painted into the ice. Just, I guess you would say, kind of like a target, a dartboard, so to speak. You've got what they call a 12-foot ring, which is your very outside, an 8-foot ring, a 4-foot ring, and what they call a button is just like your bullseye, right dead smack in the middle. And you've got that painted on each end. And what you do is at one end, you grab a curling rock, which on an average weighs about 45 pounds. And you get into a hack. And what the game is you've got to slide out of the hack with this curling rock. And you can only slide, maybe 15, 20 feet maximum. Some don't even slide that. I only do about 10 feet. And then you got to release your rock and you got to try and get it down on the target, so to speak, in the rings or on the button at the other side. And you've got two teams of players consisting of 4 players on each team. So not all rocks are going to make it down there into the rings. Some will bounce off to the side and be disqualified. But when you've got the rocks at the other end, they call it a skip. He's the lead player on your team. He's telling you where he wants you to put that rock. And you've got to do the math, the science, whatever you want to call it, to know how hard you got to slide and push that rock and how to make it to curl around another rock, which you do by putting a very slight spin on your rock. And by putting a spin on it, usually you do not want it to rotate more than 3 or 4 times through the whole length of that sheet of ice. So there's a lot of science on how to get that rock to that position where the lead player wants you to put it. It's a challenge. I love it.
Yeah, very cool. So I almost think of like golf / hockey, kind of a combo of maybe some different sports in a way.
Yeah, I guess even shuffleboard, I guess you could say it's similar to shuffleboard.
That's right. I was trying to think of that one. Yeah. And obviously on ice.
Because that one too, it's on a board, but you got to try and get your little rock to the other end and in the proper spot.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing, only not on a much bigger scale and on a sheet of ice.
Exactly. Yep. So then in terms of curling for the blind, I'm curious, how is it adapted for blind and visually impaired folks?
Well, what they do, we curl just the same as any other people. The only adaptations there is we've got coaches / guides that will line us up in the hack and position us so that we're sliding the rock down the center of the ice, or wherever the person, the lead at the other end, where he wants you to put the rock. You've got to be on, maybe a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left of the center line. So the guide sets you up in there, and just some do it by tapping a broom on the ice to give you direction to go straight. Myself, I just verbally talk to my coach and get the rocks down there. The coach will tell you what rocks are in play and where the skip wants you to put your rock. So it's, not too much different than a normal game. You just got a guide that's making sure you're going to go straight down the ice where you're supposed to go.
Interesting.
That's the only difference.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of one of those sports that has very little adaptations, just one or two little things, and
yeah,
it's accessible.
You've got to know the mathematics. You got to know how to read the ice, so to speak, and how slippery it is, how much of a spin you got to put on your rock, and there's a lot of science, a lot of mathematics. You really got to know. You got to read the ice virtually to know what you got to do with your rock. And it's a challenge. I love a challenge, and I'm in it. I've been doing it with the blind league now for probably about 45 years now, and I'm in serious with it. I go right into the Western Canada Bonspiels, and I've last year taken part in the Canadian Bonspiels. So I'm hardcore. I'm right into it. I love it.
Wow, that's awesome. And so, at what age were you when you kind of found out about, the adapted version?
I was about 23, 24 years old when I found out there was such a thing as blind curling, and seeing what it was all about as a preteen and loving the sport back then. I just figured I've got to get into this and follow the game that I enjoyed doing. And once I got into it, I just found out that it's actually a sport done Canada wide, right from Vancouver to Nova Scotia. So it's actually a pretty big sport with the blind. There's many other sports with blind, but curling is quite a recognized one.
Right, right. Interesting. And I'm curious, can it be played both indoors and outdoors, or
It's an indoor game.
fully indoor?
It's
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's fully indoor.
Yeah.
And we curl at a facility here in Saskatoon that is with just your regular sighted people curling, and there's also even a wheelchair curling league, so that goes to that same arena. So it's amazing how many other people do it that have different disabilities.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And I know it is. It's definitely in the Olympics. I think the Paralympics might have a version of it
Yes,
too.
they do, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I don't think it's for the blind though. If I'm
No,
could be
they don't
wrong.
have blind, but they've got
Right.
the wheelchair one, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, it would be cool to see blind curling at some point. Get in there.
I would love to see it in the Olympics,
Oh yeah, no doubt.
but I don't think the blind curling is that popular or well known. So besides in Canada,
Right, right. So in terms of like the scoring system, I'm curious as far as, is it like a point system, or how does that kind of work?
it is strictly a point system. You could have your team could have, say, three rocks in what they call the house in the rings, and the other team could have four. But it just depends on the ones that are closest to the button are the only ones that count. So if there's say their team has two rocks closer to the button than yours, they would count 2 points. And the most you can count on an end is 8 ends, which is each curler throws two rocks. So there's 8 rocks per team in play.
I see. Gotcha. And then is it broken down as far as like periods or quarters, or kind of the format of a match?
Normally we play 8 ends, go down and back 4 times type deal, 8 ends. A lot of times you just run out of time and you can't get the 8 ends in because we try to go on a 2-hour game. Sometimes you can only get 6 ends in, but you got to try and get 8 ends in the 2 hours.
I see. I see. And as far as like blindfolds, are blindfolds, worn at all, or is that part of the sport?
No, it's strictly for the blind. It's you can be partially sighted or totally blind. It really doesn't matter. As long as you were visually impaired, we let you in on the teams. And we've had some sighted teams actually challenge us. They want to play us too because of our skills and whatnot. So
Sure. So you have competed against sighted folks too.
I haven't yet. They want to get us going against the regular league and
Okay.
see how we do with them. But it's a challenge I would love to do.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing to see, the visually impaired group actually defeat the sighted folks.
Well, it is possible. It can be done.
For sure. Yeah. In the leagues that you've been on, is it like co-ed or men's and women's broken down into, those
It's strictly co-ed.
Co-ed.
It don't
Okay.
matter whether you're male, female, virtually anybody we kind of take over 16 years of age.
16. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because we do a lot of bit of traveling, and when you're at Bonspiels and whatnot, they kind of like have an open bar and whatnot. So you try to keep people of legal age with you.
Sure.
So we kind of, plus at the age of 16, normally the parents don't allow a child to travel like that for big events like that if they're under 16. So we kind of like to leave it at a round age like that.
Right. Gotcha. And then you mentioned, is it Bonspiels?
Yes, there's Bonspiels. Matter of fact, in Saskatoon, next March, our league itself is holding the Western Canada Bonspiel here in Saskatoon. Our league is putting it on. So we'll have teams from British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba all competing here.
Oh, wow. So Bonspiel, that's like the bigger tournaments, or is that
that's the big tournaments. I guess you could say kind of like your World Series would be our final Canadian Bonspiel. And the Western Canada would be just like your playoffs to get into the finals.
Right. Makes sense. Wow. Any kind of achievements, any highlights you want to mention in your 45 plus years of playing blind curling?
Well, I've managed to meet a lot of people Canada-wide, and I've never managed to pull off a high win with the Canadian, and we've always been shut out, but we haven't been in the Canadian Bonspiel here for a long time. We've only managed to make it in 2-3 times, so it's a challenge when you get up there. You're competing with the best of the best, so to speak. So it's a learning experience, really, when you get up into the finals like that. It's a real learning experience. You get to talk to the people that have won the Canadian Championship, and you sure get to learn a lot of tricks of the trade and a lot of knowledge from the more experienced people. And I'm always out there to learn how to better myself.
Oh yeah, I can totally relate. In the adaptive sports I've had the chance to play, getting to pick the brains of the experts and the champs, let's say. I mean, can't beat that.
Oh no. And I don't know, I've talked to many people down in the States, and everybody asks me, how's it done? They've never heard of curling. So I don't think there's any blind curling down in the States, but it would sure be nice to see something like that start up and slowly expand to other countries, even to see if we can get into, say, the Special Olympics.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I think of like blind hockey, and we've only had blind hockey here in the U.S. since maybe 2013 or 14, whereas it's been around much longer in Canada, obviously. So
I've yet to figure out how they do the hockey. I've never really paid much attention to it because hockey never was my interest. I was always in the curling.
For sure. Yep. So then currently, are you part of a local team or organization, or what's kind of your current status?
Yes, I am. Actually, our league, we call it Sticks and Stones.
Ooh, I like it.
Kind of a little bit of a play on the rocks and everything. And
sure. Yep.
We've got our own league here, and like I say, we're putting on the Bonspiel, and curling is not a cheap sport. Just to put this Bonspiel on itself is going to run us probably about $70,000.
Wow.
So we got to do a lot of fundraising, a lot of sponsorships and everything. But even though it's an expensive sport, I love it. I'm there all the way and doing a lot of fundraising. Well, I've been doing fundraising for 30 years. I've been a Lions member, so I'm an old trade at doing fundraising.
Yeah, there's definitely an art to it. It sounds like you've got it down pretty pat. So.
Oh yes, I've done it for many years, so they kind of rely on me for a little bit of my experience on how to do things.
Sure. Yep. So then, like in this day and age, are you practicing kind of consistently, or what does kind of your schedule or routine look like with curling?
Well, with curling, it's a winter sport. Usually we start up the end of September and go roughly till the middle to the end of March. And so you're looking at what, 6, 8 months
Sure.
roughly. So then we kind of leave the summer to relax and enjoy, and we try to keep in shape using treadmills or bikes or whatever the case may be to keep ourselves from stiffening up and keep our muscles limbered up and whatnot. But
Yeah, I was going to ask about like certain stretches or exercises as far as kind of preparing your body, for curling.
myself, I prefer something like a rowing machine because you're using your leg muscles, you're using your back muscles, you're using your arm, which is virtually what you're doing because you need your strength in your hips to come out of the hack and slide down the ice. You need your arms for the throwing the rock and sliding it down the ice and the balance and everything. So, and your back, well, you're crouched down in that hack to slide out. So you got to keep your arms, the back end, your hips all limbered up.
Right, right, absolutely.
So I find when I get a rowing machine in my hands, I'm always on that, using that to whatever extent I can.
Excellent. Yeah, and just it's good for the body in general, whether you're curling or not, to be moving. Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've never done it yet, but I've even thought about getting into these dragon boat races in the summertime, and you're virtually using the same muscles you would be for curling, so it'd be quite
Yeah,
the summer sport, I think.
absolutely. Yeah, I've heard of that. I'm not quite as familiar, but I know it's very popular with the blind community. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that's what I hear, and I love boating, so it's something I might eventually seek out for summer activity.
Sure. And that kind of leads me to my next question about just other blind sports in your area that you've either tried or maybe have an interest in trying.
Well, I've tried. I'm one. There's no such thing if I can't do it. You know, there's no reason why you can't do any sport. You can try it. If you don't succeed, well, then you know you can't do it. But I've cross country skied, which is beautiful exercise, very strenuous. I loved it. I've even downhill skied, and that was a trick, but I had an instructor that was bound and determined he was going to show me how to do it, and I wound up doing it. And bowling, well, that's a very common sport for anybody.
Sure.
And and there's other sports like goalball, hockey. I've never really had the interest to try those yet, but I've always I've always been an avid curler. There's just no matter what I do, I always wind up going back to my curling.
Wow. That's your thing. That's your niche, right?
Yeah, and it's such a well, they it used to be called a gentleman's sport. There's not body contact. There's it's always politeness and the whole bit. It's not a rough sport. It's a very peaceful game, and I love it.
Right, right, absolutely. If someone's listening to this that's maybe not involved in any kind of sports or recreation, what kind of advice would you give to that person about kind of the benefits of being involved in something like this?
Well, they've for curling, you've definitely got to have your balance. You need your arm strength. You need hip strength. Those are three majors to do it. Uh, if nowadays there's what they call a curling stick, so you don't have to go down in the hack, but you still got to have the balance. You got to be able to walk a straight line, try not to veer and whatnot. So you've got to have your wits to you, so to speak. Unlike cross country skiing, if you've done any of that, you've got your skis in a track that you follow, so it's you know not as hard to go offline. you're stuck in that track. But with curling, you're on that ice and there's no boundaries. You can slide off very easily and go off center. So it's a challenge. You got to have your balance and you got to be able to follow a line.
Sure. A lot of precision, it sounds like, and just having to focus.
Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Really got to be focused.
Right.
Which is tough because I know even myself crossing the street, it is very easy to veer and not go in a straight line. So it's
no doubt.
It's very common to veer over.
Right. Oh yeah. And I would think, like a lot of sports too, participating in them kind of gives you maybe a little more coordination or can help, kind of boost your mobility in a way as well, would you say?
Well, that's it. And it's good exercise. And if you don't mind a little bit of cold, it's good.
Yeah.
People figure out how can I stand being on ice for 2 hours and doing it. But if you've got proper footwear, you really don't get hot because you actually work up the heat by curling. So it's not that bad. You just got to have the proper footwear and proper gloves that don't throw you off. And
right. Yeah. In terms of footwear, what kind of shoes are you rocking?
I've got what they call a pair of curling shoes, which is really not much different than a regular set of sneakers, runners, however you want to call it. The only difference is the one shoe has what they call a slider on it. It's just like a Teflon sheet down the whole sole, so it is able to slide. And that's virtually it. It's not mandatory, but our league put it out. We bought curling helmets just in case you slip and fall. You could very easily hit your head on the ice. So we made it mandatory, just like cycling, to wear a helmet. And I've got one of those too. So it's handy thing to have.
Oh yeah. Is it kind of like a football helmet or what kind of shape?
Just like a cycling helmet.
Okay.
It goes over your head and protects the top and the back of your head.
Yep. Easy enough. Yeah.
And it comes down over your forehead, so it doesn't obscure any kind of vision if you do have partial vision. But it protects the head, so if you do fall, the helmet's gonna take the blunt of it.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I've never lived in, super cold temperatures, but I have family members that have fallen on the ice and slipped and, that are fully sighted. And so certainly understand and the importance of that.
Well, even look at your hockey players. They've fallen, and how many concussions have they had? And football games also, your football players, look how many have had concussions. So it's something that's very easily done in sports. So you got to think consciously and protect yourself.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So before we wrap up here, I wanted to give you the chance to mention any kind of contact info. If you want to share an email address or social media, if folks are interested in learning more about curling.
Virtually, the only way is to contact in Canada, the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, or if you are in contact with the Canadian Council for the Blind, they would steer you to any league in your area and give you all the contact information. The Council for the Blind is fantastic that way. As for the states, I'm not too sure if the NFB or the AFB would have any kind of knowledge behind that, but that might be a way to go for you Americans.
Right. Yeah, I will include links to that info, as far as the Canadian Council, to their website in the show notes for people as well.
Yes, Canadian Council they're the ones that put on the big major bonspiels, and they're very, very informative that way. If anybody's interested, they would be more than happy to help out anybody in pretty much any kind of blind sport, really.
That is interesting because, yeah, like ACB and NFB, they do some sport stuff. I mean, a little bit here and there, maybe at the conventions they have, but beyond that, they're not promoting a whole lot of sports. So that's really
up here,
cool
the Canadian Council for the Blind promotes a lot of sports.
Huh. Oh, that's really, really cool to hear. Yeah.
Very helpful that way.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, on this episode, again, we've been chatting with Murray Rudolph from the great country of Canada. And Murray, really, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for your insight and just for sharing your story here on the podcast.
Well, thank you very much for being in contact. And if there's any information I can ever give out, you've got my contact email and phone number. And by all means, anybody can get a hold of myself, and I'd be more than happy to help them out.
Excellent. Alrighty. Sounds great. Thanks again, Murray.
You take care, Greg, and it's definitely been a pleasure.
To hear more episodes of the Eyes Free Sports podcast and to subscribe, search for Eyes Free Sports on your favorite podcast platform or visit eyesfreesports.com. Be sure to follow the Eyes Free Sports podcast at facebook.com/eyesfreesports and on Twitter at Eyes Free Sports.